Hi, welcome everybody. Welcome to my hammer tutorial on creating insurgency maps. I'm going to start off really basic to start with because you know what you need to know. You need to learn the basics. Honest to God, it's really that simple. Learn some basic good practices. You need to learn good stuff from the beginning. You cannot just jump right into it and make a perfect map. There are certain. Here we have hammer. Here's your 3D view on the left, and then if you highlight the upper corner, it's front. We'll talk about basics. Some things, I mean, a lot of things when I started out, I didn't. There's a lot of help read me tutorials. I'm not really a help read me video watcher. YouTube, that's where I've gotten a lot of help, and that, you know, people like Mike Hawk and others have been extremely helpful in helping me. But I learned a lot from Top Hat Waffle on YouTube. So So we're just going to start off with the basics and explain why things need to happen. Um, First off, we're just going to just go to the block tool, and we're just going to create it in the upper quadrant. Make a small block. Doesn't have to be very large. 1024 by 1024. And then make sure you have no draw selected, and explain why you don't. No draw is very vital to drawing when you have your brush tool. And most people get into hammer and they start drawing and they don't take into consideration. So I'm going to zoom in. So here we have our first, this will be our floor, and you can see it's no draw all the way around. Now when I first started mapping, I started, I draw walls um, like this, and I draw a block. Say this was if I didn't say I had a texture select wall. Doesn't matter what you pick. Press enter. Okay. So you think, oh, that looks like a normal wall, right? Go all the way around. You can see that it's textured every single side, including the top and including the bottom. Like if I move and move it up, I click on it and move it up, you can see that the bottom is textured. Unless you have X-ray vision, what do you need to see the bottom for, and why does it need to be textured? Well, it does. So the proper way to texture is to texture only the faces that are seen. So basically, if you have the whole block selected, what you browse no draw. Say they are the way they no draw. You go to the no draw texture, and then you click this block here. Apply texture, current texture to basically the whole block. So click that, it applies it to all faces. That'll fix that. So let's say that this is going to be our wall. It's 32. It's 96. So you want to keep all your items on grid. When you click on things, you can see here that the lines here, and you can see that this one, the magenta one, the cyan one. You basically want to move this to the outside on the outside of the door. You don't want it overlap. I mean, there's no need to overlap stuff because you won't see the overlap. You won't move it to the edges. It should look that is one wall. It looks terrible with no draw. Yeah, I understand that. Drawing in no draw actually is much faster, believe it or not. People say, oh, well, you have to draw the whole thing in no draw and then texture everything later. Yes, that is true. But you're guaranteed for people not to see everything that they need to see. As a player, if you're standing here, entity tool, place a player here. The player sees the ground he's standing on. He sees the wall, but he doesn't need to see the outside or the bottom. Okay? He doesn't need those things. Don't need to be rendered for him. Let's from the wall again. Hold the shift key. Right spot. When you're in 3D view, you press the Z key and both sides. So now what you do one of two things. Either just draw the other wall here, um, which is fast, or if this was, let's say this was perfectly square. Yeah, maybe it was 1024 by 1020. So you could do what you could do is you could click this one, this wall. It's easier just to click it in the three. And now they're both selected. So then what you do is hold the shift key down, drag it over a little bit. It shows a square box, but only the two walls are selected. Go to the tools, transform, 90 degrees. So it'll just rotate just those two walls. The other two will remain 90 degrees. So then you just move it while it's still selected to there. And make sure and you can actually see where it's supposed to be. I'll get to the no draw in a second. It's important to draw it all in no. If I zoom in here and grab my block tool again, I want to draw this corner, and you'll see that it actually, you can see in this view that it's right. So I only want to bring it up one block to the top. So now if I pull, while I'm on the outside, you can go to the inside. You can see that it's no draw all over the place, right? It's important. So as the player, if you're starting here, you want to only see the faces that are seen because you don't want the engine rendering stuff that's not seen. That's just wasteful power. And you always want to optimize your level. I mean, optimization is a key. It's not everybody's a pro at it. I'm certainly not a pro at it. But I mean, I want to get the basics, so you'll be able to create an Insurgency map, especially like a PvP map with like no time at all. Like, I mean, and I often say to people, map designing itself physically is not very difficult. Designing the map is not very difficult. The difficulty in what makes maps special is the creativity, the realism that is very important. Now, just as a note, most people when they start building, let's say this was all textured and these things weren't sealed, these corners weren't sealed. What they end up doing is they come back here and they go, well, I want to draw a skybox around my whole map because I have leaks. And they do this, and then they hollow it out, and then they put a skybox around their whole map because it has leaks and stuff. That's definitely not the way to go. And don't you can look this up, but don't do it that way. That is not the way to do a proper skybox. To do a proper skybox, you should seal your level on top of the level based on grid. Doing it this way is a cheap way of doing it. If your map's really small, fine. You can do it for testing. Like if you're just throwing this together in 2 seconds and you want to test it, fine. You can do it that way. But that's not the way to go. Okay, so definitely not. So getting back to him. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the texture tool here. The texture, now that we're for dirt. Find a dirt that we like. A lot of textures on. I'm sure you probably don't have. Okay, so now that it's selected, if you right click on where you want to apply it. Now, the difference between what I did before, where it selected the whole block and the face, only the face, is that now it only applied it to the face. You see, nothing else has been touched. Only the face of the block has been touched, which is exactly what you do not want to have all these texture. Why would you want to have dirt texture on the outside? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense, right? So, excuse me. So, I mean, so now, so that's your first thing, and then you want to say, I want a wall. And we're going to keep this simple to start. I mean, we'll make it more advanced as we go. Here's a wall. Let's see. This one. Right click on the wall you want. Okay. Now let's say this looks great, but this thing is too high. This bottom thing. Click on it, and then while this is still open, use your arrow keys and move it down. So now it looks, like, or even move it to the top. But scroll it right down, it'll go right to the top. So like that. And then once you got it the way you want it, you hold the Alt key down while it's still selected. While it's still selected, hold the Alt key down. And right click on the faces that you want it to match. And then what it'll do, it'll continue the base all the way around. And it's still, still not on the outside. You don't want the outside. You only want the faces seen texture. You do not want the texture here. That's very bad. That's very bad. That just causes extra rendering time, map compile times. It just looks bad. It's just not the way. So anyway, we're going to do the Skybox now. So now we're going to do the Skybox. Tools, Skybox. Right click on the ceiling. Of course, it's only going to apply it to the inside, not the outside. Right? Now you're thinking that doesn't look like sky. Well, it doesn't, because that's the way it shows it in Hammer. It shows it as that texture, because in reality it's it's actually shown in when you compile it. Okay, so this is the basic start of a basic room. So okay, thinking, okay, what else do we have to do? Well, we have to put in a spawn point, right? So let's say I put there an entity, and then while it's selected, press Alt Enter, do INS spawn point, and you'll see it. There's also a spawn point for security and one for insurgents, but we're going to leave it on security. Okay? And the model, there is no model by default, but that doesn't mean you won't appear there. It just means that it shows up. That's the way it shows up. So if we go one of my older versions of Warehouse, which I'll just grab one in there. So basically, there is a character model for insurgents, and there's a character model for security. So if you notice this guy, your Alt Enter, you see it says security there. The security model. This is, if you click on it, you'll see it says Models, Character, Security, Light Model. So highlight that. Click on it. Alt Enter. Go down to World Model. Paste it in here. They apply. Now there is, I've been told that there is some issues with entities colliding with brushes. So the rule of thumb is that you place your character a little bit off the ground. So what I'm going to do, ground down here that you see, and that's supposedly, if you look at other maps, when you get around to looking at other maps, you will see the characters and characters be slightly elevated. That's why when you start a round, you'll see yourself like initially just fall to the ground. Like maps do that because that's usually good practice for that to happen. If you zoom in, you can barely tell he's off the ground, but he is slightly. Okay, so now that he's there, um, we need a light environment, because right now we do have the skybox, but that doesn't mean that that's. I mean, if you compile it right now, it's gonna look really weird. There won't be a proper lighting in here, even though the sky is sky blue. Let me just quickly show you. File, save map. Let me save it to. See, my maps are right. New folder. Let's save it. It's obviously read only when you first start. So let's start. Okay. So we're gonna run this and let's see what happens. The colors and it's just gonna be very, very nice. But what we're gonna do this. We're gonna run BSP normal, viz fast, and rad fast, and then click OK. It's gonna compile pretty quick. It just takes a bit to load the game and everything. Let's select. No. Spawn point. Or maybe because it's so dark. We add an extra. It's very important. You click on it, press light. Environment. The reason I can, by default, Hammer doesn't have this option on by default, but from experience, I'm watching Top App Awful's videos. I realized if you go to here, if you go to Tools, Options, and under 2D View, you see where it says Arrow keys nudge selected object to vertices. Right? So that's extremely important because when you're trying to nudge an object, like if you're making a floor, and I draw a wall here. Of course, I don't want to do Skybox. I want always makes a no draw, and then say I want click on it, turn it, go to Tools, Transform, 90 degrees. Here, say it's here. Say it's there, and then so if you're standing in front of it, if you're standing to wherever, which side you're on, right? If you click on it and use the arrow keys, it nudges it to grid. You can see that how useful that would be, especially to keep stuff on grid. Because a lot of things, some things don't end up on grid, not always. Right? You can see here, you can see from the 3D view that, I mean, and you can move it, after the fact. And same with this one. After it snaps to grid, right? That's important. So we'll leave that there for now. So we'll get back to ENV light, lighting VE, and then go up to him, up to the point where in the pitch yaw roll here. Say point at. What do you want to point at? I'm going to point at the center, okay, and then reverse the angles and everything. Make sure he's still selected. Scroll into him. Hold the shift key down. Got another friend here, which is obviously a copy of him, but then he's not going to be. There's Alt Enter to ENV apply. And you see it retain the pitch and everything from the previous one. That's why I copied. That's there. Over there. Obviously, I will show you too when you compile with no draw. You don't see the textures because they're not drawn. That's why. So let's see what happens. So line. Dual player. Click on him. Alt Enter. Team. And obviously he's no longer a security. Here. Here. Put the model in. Apply. You remember where I put the no draw? You can see it on the ground over there. Do you see what happens to it? Because it's invisible. So I put the environment in here. Okay? So what you see here, the no draw, because it's no draw to the floor, it actually makes no draw right where it's sitting. Over there, you
Alright, we need to capture the objectives and protect our own weapon cache.
so you can see where there's no draw. I mean, you can't walk through it because it is there. You just can't see it. It's not drawn, right? And then you can see there's actually shadow effects from it, even though it's no draw. Anyway, so this is it here. So this is what we've created so far. This is great. This is a good starting point because you wouldn't believe how far you can get with this. You know what I mean? It's fantastic. So, anyways, that's a good point. So now let's get back to let's say I mean you see some maps with like obviously they don't have walls over there. So let's say you wanted to divide this. So if you multi-click by holding the control key. So if you hold the control key down, click that wall, click this wall, and click this. You have it selected here in the front view. You go to your clipping tool. It stays red, right? You want to clip it all the way across. The way the clipping tool works is a whole separate on itself. But the clipping tool works on sectors or like segments. So if you scroll out, you'll see that the upper part of it is still red and the bottom part is white. Whatever is red, it will cut out. You don't want it cut out. So if you press the clipping tool again, you'll see the bottom's now red. That means it'll cut the bottom out. If you press it again, they're both white. When they're both white and you press enter, that means it'll make a cut there. Okay, press enter. So now, if you go here, you'll see that these are cut now. This is cut along here. These are separate. So let's just say that I want the no draw texture. Right click on the texture above here, here, here. Okay, so now you have your skybox on a half wall. Okay, you can barely see. You can see where the security insurgents' heads are. They really can't see over the wall, although if they jump, they could probably see over. So the important thing is that it's still, again, I repeat, that the outside is all no draw. Still, it's only face edge. It's only faces that are seen. So now, what's it look like now? Well, let's look at it now. It's important to do the skybox in a proper way. You only need to put a skybox around what's outside. You don't need to put one around what's inside because there's no sun shadows, obviously. So So you can see here that we've split the wall, and now the skybox is pretty awesome, right? I mean, but that's the way the skybox looks in game. That's the way you see it most of the time. And the wall, and then you can jump when we get to that point. You can see when you jump, you can see the only faces have been changed. You can see that the wall looks hollow, right, when you see it. So that's important. So basically, this is a good starting point. This part right here is extremely helpful. Like if you can get to this, you can take it away. Like I often tell people, map developing is not very difficult. Creating maps is not very difficult. It's the attention to detail and the creativity that make people have the wow factor. I mean, this doesn't look very exciting. I mean, you could add Hummers and you could add buildings and fences and boxes, and everything makes it look that much nicer. You'd be surprised how far you can. So this is the part one. We're only going to talk about the basic square and basic skybox, and then in part two we'll continue with that, and we'll go from there. And then we'll continue with the same map, and then we'll talk about adding spawn points, proper spawn points, capture points, weapon caches, and so forth. and then from there. So I appreciate you watching the first part 1, and we'll continue from there. And I'll see you in part 2. Thank you.